Come take a look at how we made our pig pen to not only last, but actually contain pigs. This is going to be the new location of our pig pen. We are getting a couple of potbelly pigs, and we're not getting them for in the house. We're getting them for bacon eventually, but I'm actually super excited about getting these little pigs, and so we wanted to provide a good space for them and with some nice shelter, but we don't want to lose all of the storage for hay that's in our barn, so we need to section off a little portion of it as well as add a little pasture area for them. My husband already coated all of the posts that we're going to use with the Thompson's water seal, and now I'm doing our 2x4s that are going across the bottom and across the top. People forget sometimes that when you use these treatments or paints or stains on your wood, what you're actually doing is you're protecting your wood. It's not just for cosmetic purposes, even though it's nice for that as well. We're using Thompson's water seal today, and it's a transparent with just a hint of the Sedona redwood kind of look to it. Because we're not going to have access into the pen from the inside of the barn, we decided to go ahead and put up a gate on the outside, just off from where our door is for our barn itself. So that should work pretty well. And this is the one that I went ahead and repainted because it had started to rust out a little bit, and it's just a good idea to refresh them. We're using a 4-inch screw hook to hold the gate on. We ended up with some leftover 4x6s from when we made our hobbit hole, and so we decided to go ahead and use those as our posts for the pasture, which should work out just great because they're so strong. Again, we're going to do the dry technique with the concrete where we just pour it in, add some water, and mix it up in the hole. Like I said, works really well for us. For this far side of our fence, we decided to connect the fence post directly to the barn because on the other side we were able to do that with the gate. It worked out, but as far as connecting the fence to the outside of the barn itself, we didn't think that was a good idea. So we're putting this one piece in with really long screws into the framing of the barn itself. Now that we have this one side all prepped, we're going to go ahead and put up our cattle panel, and we haven't added the water yet just because you have a little bit of wiggle room until you add that. Once you add that, then you're kind of set. But we'll get this one side set, and then it'll make it a lot easier for us to measure off of that for the additional sides. Try to put the cattle panel in such a way so that if the hogs are pushing against it, it's going to be nice and secure. Now we are putting some wood on the top and on the bottom, and we're using some good deep screws for this. We also have some 2.5-inch staples for putting on our fencing itself. So we're hoping that this will be enough to make it so that it can go on the outside, but you might want to consider putting it on the inside if you're a little bit more worried about that, so when the animals push on it, it's not going to push off. In addition to stapling into the post, you also need to staple into the top and bottom rails. So we're sectioning off a portion of the stall for the pigs so that they have some space to come in during the winter where they can get a little bit warm, have some shelter, but we still need some hay storage, so we can't get them this whole space. Most of the walls we can just attach to the walls themselves, but we do need one post in the ground that's cemented in so that it's not going to go anywhere, because pigs are pretty strong. If they're going to push against it, we want it to hold. We've figured out the level that we want it to be, the spacing, and now it's just a matter of concreting it in. It's a little bit unorthodox, but we actually like to do our posts by just pouring in the dry concrete and getting it wet and just kind of mixing it in the hole. It seems to work pretty well for us for this kind of purpose. To have it connect to the wall a little bit more easily, we need to put in another piece of blocking. So we cut a 4x4 in order to have something to connect our wall to. We're using an old plywood sheet that used to have some linoleum on it, so there's still some leftover glue and whatnot. So we're going to put that on the opposite side of where the pigs are at so that they don't eat at it. We don't want them to get into that. It'll be next to the hay, but that'll be okay. Right now we have a lot of loose hay because some mice got into our barn. Evidently we need a barn cat too. So this wall, we just put it right into the cavity of the one wall under the window, right against that board that we put it on earlier, and then we're putting it against the post that we have on the other side and just making sure everything's nice and level. The boards that we picked out for the end of the little stall section ended up not being quite wide enough. So what I'm going to do is put them in starting at the top, see how much space I have at the bottom, and then try to fill that in. I believe it'll be about the size of a 2x4, so we'll work from there. Now this isn't strictly necessary, but we have a bit of an uneven cut on the end of one of these boards, and I have a little bit of extra trim left over from a previous project, so I'm just going to trim out that corner so that I can hide that, because trim is an amazing thing that way. After talking to a number of family and friends who have had pigs, we decided that we needed to make our pig pen a little bit more secure. What we're doing for that is digging a 4-inch by 4-inch trench all the way around the pig pen. Then we'll put the rebar in, connect that all the way around, and then we'll pour our concrete in. Now this we're going to do with the wet concrete as opposed to dry like we did the post holes. It's a little bit different purpose, so it kind of makes sense. So the hope with this is that it will provide just one more barrier to the pigs being able to dig out of it. We've heard of people burying wire so that the pigs can't dig through it, and I think that that's a good idea too, but this is one that works for us. In addition to putting the trench in, we also found that our piglets are quite tiny. So since they're such small little babies at this point, we need to add some really fine mesh fencing so that they can't get out. We're all done with the pig pen. The pigs are getting bigger, but it's worked so great. They haven't tried to dig out yet. Of course, they're little. I'll let you know if that changes. But they seem to love their little space, and this has worked so well for us.